Namaskar and welcome to the discussion on fundamental duties under the Constitution of India. Friends, to start with, by fundamental we mean something very basic, important, serious and essential, and by duty we mean an obligation to discharge. The Constitution of India contains a part being Part 4A, which was inserted in the Constitution called the Fundamental Duties in the year 1976 by an amendment. The Constitution has made a mention of the term fundamental at three different parts. The Part 3 concerns a declaration of many rights to be inviolable and basic rights called the fundamental rights. It is so basic that any law in derogation of any of these rights is void, and any person whose fundamental right has been infringed by the state action can move the Supreme Court of India to maintain that infringed right. In Part 4, dealing with the directive principles, Article 38 expressed that directives are fundamental in the governance of the country and the states are to apply those principles in making laws. These two provisions concern rights and enforcement. The third provision is Part 4A called the Fundamental Duties, which went on declaring that it is the duty of every citizen of India to observe those duties. By fundamental duty we mean the basic or consideration of his or her being a citizen of India. There is a jurisprudential maxim that rights and duties are correlative. A right is defined to mean an interest, respect for which is a duty and disregard of which is a wrong. So, observance of duty is respect for a right residing upon someone. Where there is a right, there is a corresponding duty upon another. But the reverse is not always true, that in every existence of duty, there may be a corresponding rights. For example, the duties that are imposed by and under a criminal law, or the duty to have compassion for living beings, or the duty to protect the wild animals, etc. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, even though a Code of Human Rights still contains a provision for observance of duties. Under Article 29, everyone has duties to the community which allow free and full development of his personality, and in the exercise of his right and freedoms, everyone shall be subject to such limitations as are determined by law. Since duty appeals mostly to the moral obligation to be observed, one may refer to the ancient texts and dharma shastras to appreciate the question, what is the duty of the human beings? Reference may be made to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The Lord taught to his disciple in the following words, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sangohasta karmani. It is for you, O human beings, to do karma, good deeds, without any fear. And mind you, it is for the Lord to reward you commensurate to your deeds. In other words, your duty is your right. For any Islam, there are 5 pillars to identify a person as Muslim. Out of the 5, one is the virtue to give zakat or alms to the poor and needy out of his earnings and wealth. In other words, to serve and to give. The Bible says, be a good neighbor. Considering the religious texts and teachings, one common duty of the human beings can be deduced, that is, to serve the mankind, to take reasonable care of the neighbors, to feed others from his own earnings, etc. Thus, in the past, people had duties to observe in relation to another and also a duty to the society. The society is regulated by the observance of the duties. Conferment of the rights comes much later and due to necessity. Sir Henry Maine has made the celebrated statement, the movement of progressive societies has hitherto been a movement from status to contract. In the past, the society is regulated by the status like authority of a father, a headman of a clan, the eldest male member of the family, a woman, a child, etc. There was reverence to the elders and the young persons, to have to obey them. A matrimonial alliance can take place on behalf of the bride by her parents. But in the course of time, due to the emergence of the progressive societies, the authority of the status seems to disappear and is replaced by the systems of independent contractors. In the areas of matrimonial law, the concepts of a Hindu marriage to be a sacrament has been diluted and became a contractual relationship between man and wife, which can be dissolved on happening of some event that can support the ground of divorce. Then comes the question of creation of the conferment of rights by the act of the parties, creating duties, prescribing the other part ought or ought not to behave with regard to the correlative claimant. Further, duties are imposed by the operation of customary and enacted laws as well. To deal with that, certain duties are created by the statutes for which there is no correlative right upon someone else. Such kinds of duties are called absolute duties. Long before the coming into force of the Constitution, the Indian Penal Code 1860 contained imposition of absolute duties on the pain of inflicting punishment. Those are not clear provisions of observance of duties, but making penal offences of certain acts to refrain from doing. In other words, imposing negative duties. It was only in the year 1976 that the lawmakers felt it to be the high time to enact a chapter on human duties by the 42nd Amendment, creating a new part called Part 4A and enumerated a list of duties. And those lists are, it shall be the duty of every citizen of India, first, to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. Next, to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspire our national struggle for freedom. Thirdly, to uphold and protect sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. Next, to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Next, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities. Renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. To value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. To protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. To develop scientific temper, humanism, and a spirit of inquiry and reform. Next, to safeguard public property and abjure violence. Next, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement, and to provide opportunities for education to his child between the age of 6 to 14 years. The Parliament is competent to enforce these duties by making laws. Long before coming into force of the Constitution, the Indian Penal Code 1860 contains some provisions already implementing some of the fundamental duties by making such acts as penal. To mention some of the provisions in the Indian Penal Code, Section 121, wage or attempt to wage war against the government of India is punishable with death or imprisonment of life. Section 124A, sedition, uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. Section 354 punishes for outraging the modesty of women. Section 354A provides punishment for sexual harassment of women. Section 354B of the Code prescribes punishment for using criminal force to women with the intent to disrobe. Section 354C punishes the act of voyeurism to women. Section 354D punishes stalking a woman. All these penal provisions will have reference now to the observance of the fundamental duty of a citizen to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of woman. There are provisions in the Indian Penal Code which have reference to the duty of the citizens to protect the environment. To cite some of these provisions are Section 277 punishes a person for fouling water of public spring or reservoir. Section 278 punishes a person for making atmosphere noxious to health. These penal provisions will have reference to the duty of the citizen of India to protect and improve natural environment, including lakes, rivers, etc. Before the introduction of the fundamental duties in the Constitution, the Parliament has passed some laws which enforce the duties. For example, under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, any activity disrupting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India is illegal and punishable. Another legislation to mention is the National Honours Act 1971. Provisions have been made under this act to punish those who would show disrespect to the Constitution, either by tearing or burning its pages or by publicly doubting its wisdom. friends, we can conclude by mentioning that there is no provision in our constitution for the direct enforcement of these fundamental duties. However, these fundamental duties are fine sentiments. The idea behind is that these principles should become a part and parcel of every India's thoughts and actions. These principles will serve as a warning to the reckless citizens against the antisocial activities such as burning the constitution, trampling the national flag, destroying public properties, setting ablaze of the public libraries, and the like, outraging modesty of women, and polluting the water and air, etc. The young people must realize that there are innumerable duties which they are to discharge on the consideration of their being citizens of this country. India expects everyone to do his duties. And the chapter on fundamental duties expresses a few of those duties only. Friends, thank you. Have a good day.